Hello, fifth graders, and welcome to today's language arts lesson. If you look around, you might think, hey, this is what we did yesterday. It is, but it's going to be different today. But actually, we're going to see this objective kind of a lot as we're going through Little Women, because part of what we're going to do is really be looking at these themes and thinking about what is the author telling us about these themes? Where do we see evidence of that? So, yeah, you'll see that a lot throughout the text. But for today, you're going to need the same things you needed yesterday. You're going to need your copy of Little Women. You're going to need your white binder and maybe paper or pencil. So if you need to pause and go get those things, go ahead and then come on back. All right, so first things first, we're going to take a look at yesterday's answers to our homework questions as we've been doing most days. So here we go. Question 1 asks, how did Amy change her present? We see that she changed it for a bigger bottle of cologne. Though remember, we kind of laughed yesterday because she did change to a bigger bottle of cologne, but she also felt pretty good about herself for doing that, like patting herself on the back. Okay. 2, what did the March Girls do with their breakfast? We learned that they gave their breakfast to a family who needed it. This is the Hummel family. We're going to see them a couple of times again throughout the story. There's a family that often come to Marmee for help, and so the Marches will do what they can to help them. Which theme might this relate to? Those of you who watched yesterday's video did a great job with this. This might relate to the theme, the importance of living a virtuous life. And we talked yesterday in the video too about how we kind of see that the girls do something hard, but that there's virtue in it, right? That they use their justice to help others who needed it more than them. And that in the end, the girls end up feeling some contentment and some happiness from doing this virtuous act. 4, what do the girls often do with their time? The girls often spend their time putting on plays, we learn. And there's quite a few pages from yesterday's chapter that talk about a play that Jo wrote and that they acted out. What surprise did the girls receive that evening? The girls received the surprise of a fancy dinner, right? A very nice dinner, something along those lines. Who gave the girls this surprise? We see that the girls are kind of speculating. Was it this person? Was it this person? Was it this person? But in the end, we learn that it's Mr. Lawrence, who lives next door to the girls, who gave them this surprise. Question 7, who does Jo hope will become friends with the girls? She says that she hopes that they'll become friends with the Lawrence boy. And I talked a little bit yesterday about this being kind of an example potentially of foreshadowing, right? The author seems to be giving us a hint about something that might be coming later. So as you guys already saw, today's objective is similar to yesterday's. Again, identifying theme evidence. And so we talked yesterday, and remember, this is in your notes as you guys are reflecting on these themes. The 3 themes in particular that we're going to be reflecting on as we read through Little Women are the importance of living a virtuous life, societal expectations of women. And again, societal means like society. What do people in general at this time believe that women should and should not do? And then theme 3 would be the relationship between wealth and happiness, right? And the author continues to pose this question, or will continue to do so, like, does having more money lead to more happiness? Or is it possible to be happy without a lot of money? So we'll be considering that throughout the book. So today's questions. Number 1, what did Meg wish that her dress was made of? Actually, that kind of relates to a theme. If you think of it, if you think number 1 and what theme this might relate to, you could send me a private message and let me know what you think. 2, how did Jo help Meg get ready for the party? Those quotation marks are quite on purpose. 3, who did Jo meet at the party? And I say that this was foreshadowed in chapter 2. So if I were you, you could probably be like, yep, I know the right answer to that one already based on what we've talked about. 4, what happened to Meg at the party? 5, what is one quote that shows that Jo is not interested in acting as society expects her to? This is going to be a long setup, 5th graders. One quote that shows that Jo is not interested in acting as society expects her to is, and then you're going to provide that quote. And then 6, to which theme does this relate? This relates to the theme blank. You might have a very, very strong hunch already which theme this relates to, and that's fantastic, okay? And then question 7, create your own sentence following vocabulary sentence expectations correctly using the word jovial. So remember, when you're writing vocabulary sentences, they need to be at least 6 words long. They need to also show that you understand the definition of the word, okay? You couldn't say jovial starts with a J, right? That's problematic, right? You want to use it in context and show me you understand it. And remember, I define words for you in the instructions of the assignment. So if you're wondering what words mean, You can go look there. So, with that, fifth graders, we're going to get into today's reading. So, you're going to open your book to chapter 3 of Little Women, and we're going to start reading through it together. Chapter 3, The Lawrence Boy. Speaking of foreshadowing, fifth graders, there we see. All right. Joe, where are you? Cried Meg at the foot of the garret stairs. A garret is an attic, and Joe spends a lot of time up in the attic in the garret. So, here, answered a husky voice from above, and running up, Meg found her sister eating apples and crying over the air of Redcliffe. So she's reading a story and it's making her cry. Wrapped up in a comforter on an old three-legged sofa by the sunny window. This was Joe's favorite refuge, and here she loved to retire with half a dozen russets, those are apples, and a nice book to enjoy the quiet and the society of a pet rat who lived nearby and didn't mind her a particle. As Meg appeared, Scrabble, that's the name of the pet rat, Scrabble, whisked into his hole. Joe shook the tears off her cheeks and waited to hear the news. Such fun! Only see, a regular note of invitation from Mrs. Gardner for tomorrow night, cried Meg, waving the precious paper and then proceeding to read it with girlish delight. Mrs. Gardner would be happy to see Miss March and Miss Josephine at a little dance on New Year's Eve. Marmee is willing we should go. Now, what shall we wear? And so the footnote kind of tells us something that was typical at the time was that the oldest daughter was called Miss last name. And this was kind of the way of saying, like, she's ready to be courted or she's the first one. The idea was like you would get married if you were oldest. Obviously, not what we do now. But so Meg right now is Miss March because she's the oldest unmarried daughter. But if she got married, then Joe would become Miss March until she got married, and then Beth would be Miss March, right? And so this kind of keeps going. So Miss Josephine, she's Miss Josephine until Meg gets married. So Meg just says, what shall we wear? What's the use of asking that when you know we shall wear our poplins? Because we haven't got anything else, answered Joe with her mouth full. So their poplins are dresses that are made out of poplin. If I only had silk, sighed Meg. Mother says I may when I'm 18, perhaps, but 2 years is an everlasting time to wait. I'm sure your pops look like silk, and they're nice enough for us. Yours is as good as new, but I forgot the burn and the tear in mine. Whatever shall I do? The burn shows badly, and I can't take any out. So Meg kind of has this fixation on a silk dress for a lot of time, right? This is something she desires a lot. And Joe, meanwhile, is saying, well, your dress looks fine. I got a big burn in the back of mine. You must sit still all you can and keep your back out of sight. The front is all right. I shall have a new ribbon for my hair, and Marmee will lend me her little pearl pin. And my new slippers are lovely, and my gloves will do, though they aren't as nice as I'd like. So Meg's solution to Joe's dress problem is like, stand against the wall, then no one will ever see that you've got a burn in the back of your dress. So she's talking about her gloves, and Joe says, mine are spoiled with lemonade, and I can't get any new ones, so I shall have to go without, said Joe, who never troubled herself much about dress. So Joe's saying, I've stained my gloves with lemonade, so I guess I'm just not wearing any gloves. You must have gloves, or I won't go, cried Meg decidedly. Gloves are more important than anything else. You can't dance without them, and if you don't, then I shall be so mortified. Then I'll stay still. I don't care much for company dancing. It's no fun to go sailing round. I like to fly about and cut capers. So Joe's response is like, fine, I won't dance. You can't ask Mother for new ones. They're so expensive and you are so careless. She said when you spoiled the others that she shouldn't get you any more this winter. Can't you make them do? Asked Meg anxiously. I can hold them crumpled up in my hand so no one will know how stained they are. That's all I can do. No, I'll tell you how we can manage. Each wear one good one and carry a bad one, don't you see? Your hands are bigger than mine, and you will stretch my glove dreadfully, began Meg, whose gloves were a tender point with her. Then I'll go without. I don't care what people say, cried Joe, taking up her book. So she's saying, well, I got an idea. We'll each wear one of your nice gloves, and we'll each hold one of the stained gloves, and people will never know, right? And Meg is saying, no way you'll stretch them out. And we see already tons of hints that are pointing to this question 6, right? Of Joe saying, meh, oh well, I don't care, okay? You may have it, says Meg. You may, only don't stain it, and do behave nicely. Don't put your hands behind you, or stare, or say, Christopher Columbus, will you? Don't worry about me. I'll be as prim as I can and not get into any scrapes if I can help it. Now go and answer your note and let me finish this splendid story. And so we know from chapter 1 that Jo uses slang, and at the time, slang would be like jolly, would be an example of a slang word. But here's one where she kind of, when she's exclaiming, she'll say Christopher Columbus, right? Which would be like any name, right? You could say George Washington, but she exclaims it when she's so it's like another slang thing that she's saying. And Meg's saying, don't say that. And don't put your hands in your pocket. Put your hands behind you or stare, right? Telling her, don't do these unladylike things. So Meg went away to accept with thanks, look over her dress, and sing blithely as she did up her one real lace frill, while Jo finished her story, her 4 apples, and had a game of romps with Scrabble. On New Year's Eve, the parlor was deserted, for the 2 younger girls played dressing maids, and the 2 elder were absorbed in the all important business of getting ready for the party. Simple as the toilets were, again, these are dressing rooms, okay? There was a great deal of running up and down, laughing and talking, and at one time a strong smell of burned hair pervaded the house. Meg wanted a few curls about her face, and Jo undertook to pinch the papered locks with a pair of hot tongs. Ought they to smoke like that? Asked Beth from her perch on the bed. It's the dampness drying, replied Jo. What a queer smell. It's like burned feathers, observed Amy, smoothing her own pretty curls with a superior air. So Amy feels like, oh, I don't have to get artificial curls. I just have them. There. Now I'll take off the papers and you'll see a cloud of little ringlets, said Jo, putting down the tongs. She did take off the papers, but no cloud of ringlets appeared, for the hair came with the papers, and the horrified hairdresser laid a row of little scorched bundles on the bureau before her victim. So if you get your hair too hot, it'll burn right off, and that's what she did to Meg. So instead of these curls around her face, she now just has little sprouty hairs everywhere. What have you done? I'm spoiled. I can't go. My hair, oh, my hair, wailed Meg, looking with despair at the uneven frizzle on her forehead. Just my luck. You shouldn't have asked me to do it. I always spoil everything. I'm so sorry, but the tongs were too hot, and so I've made a mess, groaned poor Jo, regarding the black pancakes with tears of regret. So we see, I've already looked at the answers of question 1 and 2 at this point. It isn't spoiled. Just frizzle it and tie your ribbon so the ends come on your forehead a bit, and it will look like the latest fashion. I've seen many girls do it so, said Amy consolingly. Serves me right for trying to be fine. I wish I'd let my hair alone, cried Meg petulantly. So do I. It was so smooth and pretty. But it will soon grow out again, said Beth, coming to kiss and comfort the shorn sheep. After various lesser mishaps, Meg was finished at last, and by the united exertion of the family, Jo's hair was got up and her dress on. They looked very well in their simple suits, Meg in silvery drab with a blue velvet snood, lace frills, and the pearl pin. Jo in maroon with a stiff gentlemanly linen collar and a white chrysanthemum or 2 for her only ornament. Each put on one nice light glove and carried one soiled one, and all pronounced the effect quite easy and fine. Meg's high-heeled slippers were very tight and hurt her, though she would not own it, and Jo's 19 hairpins all seemed stuck straight into her head, which was not exactly comfortable. But dear me, let us be elegant or die. And so in this case, our narrator is being a little bit sarcastic, right? Meg is wearing shoes that are uncomfortable. They're too small for her feet. They're too tight and it hurts. And Jo's got little like bobby pins in her hair and they're poking into her head and it's hurting her. But then the narrator makes this sarcastic comment like, oh, it doesn't matter if it hurts. We need to be elegant or else. Like it's the only thing that matters. Okay. Have good times, dearies, said Mrs. March as the sisters went daintily down the walk. Don't eat much supper, and come away at 11 when I send Hannah for you. As the gate clashed behind them, a voice cried from a window, Girls, girls, have you both got nice pocket handkerchiefs? Yes, yes, span be nice, and Meg has cologne on hers, cried Jo, adding with a laugh as they went on, I do believe Marmee would ask that if we were all running away from an earthquake. It is one of her aristocratic tastes, and quite proper for a real lady, is always known by neat boots, gloves, and handkerchief, replied Meg, who had a good many little aristocratic tastes of her own. Now, don't forget to keep the bad breath out of sight, Joe. She's talking about the burned part of Joe's dress. So she's reminding her, keep it hidden. Don't let anyone see you're wearing a dress with a big burn in the back of it. Is my sash right? And does my hair look very bad? Said Meg as she turned from the glass in Mrs. Gardner's dressing room after a prolonged prink. I know I shall forget. If you see me doing anything wrong, just remind me by a wink, will you? Returned Joe, giving her collar a twitch and her head a hasty brush. No, winking isn't ladylike. I'll lift my eyebrows if anything is wrong, and nod if you all are all right. So she's telling Joe if she sees Joe do something, she's going to raise her eyebrows at her and nod approvingly if she's doing okay. Now hold your shoulders straight and take short steps and don't shake hands if you are introduced to anyone. It isn't the thing. How do you learn all the proper ways? I never can. Isn't that music gay? Down they went, feeling a trifle timid, for they seldom went to parties, and informal as this little gathering was, it was an event to them. Mrs. Gardner, a stately old lady, greeted them kindly and handed them over to the eldest of her 6 daughters. Meg knew Sally and was at her ease very soon, but Joe, who didn't care much for girls or girlish gossip, stood about with her back carefully against the wall and felt as much out of place as a colt in a flower garden. Half a dozen jovial lads were talking about skates in another part of the room, and she longed to go and join them, for skating was one of the joys of her life. She telegraphed her wish to Meg, but the eyebrows went up so alarmingly that she dared not stir. So Joe hears some people talking about ice skating, and she loves to ice skate, and she thinks, oh, I want to go talk to them about ice skating. And so she kind of looks at Meg like, can I? And Meg gives her a no, right? Raises her eyebrows. No one came to talk to her, and one by one the group near her dwindled away till she was left alone. She could not roam about and amuse herself, for the burned breath would show, so she stared at people rather forlornly till the dancing began. Meg was asked at once, and the tight slippers tripped about so briskly that none would have guessed the pain their wearer suffered smilingly. Joe saw a big red-headed youth approaching her corner, and fearing he meant to engage her, she slipped into a curtained recess, intending to peep and enjoy herself in peace. So as the dancing starts, Joe's just standing there because she has to keep her burned part of her dress hidden. But then she sees somebody approaching and she thinks, I think he's coming to ask me to dance. So she hides. She kind of escapes into like a curtained place where no one can see her and ducks in and thinks, I'll just stay here and watch quietly. Unfortunately, another bashful person had chosen the same refuge, for as the curtain fell behind her, she found herself face to face with the Lawrence boy. Dear me, I didn't know anyone was here, stammered Joe, preparing to go back out as speedily as she had bounced in. But the boy laughed and said pleasantly, though he looked a little startled, Don't mind me. Stay if you like. Shan't I disturb you? Not a bit. I only came here because I don't know many people and felt rather strange at first, you know. So did I. Don't go away, please, unless you'd rather. The boy sat down again and looked at his pumps. So he's looking at his shoes. Till Joe said, trying to be polite and easy, I think I've had the pleasure of seeing you before. You live near us, don't you? Next door. And he looked up and laughed outright, for Joe's prim manner was rather funny when he remembered how they had chattered about cricket when he brought the cat home. So just trying to be very formal when she speaks with him. But he kind of laughs at her, like, we've already talked before. I know that that's not how you talk. So he thinks it's kind of funny. That put Joe at her ease, and she laughed too, as she said in her heartiest way, We did have such a good time over your nice Christmas present. Grandpa sent it. But you put it into his head, didn't you now? How is your cat, Miss March? Asked the boy, trying to look sober while his black eyes shone with fun. Nicely, thank you, Mr. Lawrence, but I am not Miss March. I'm only Joe, returned the young lady. I'm not Mr. Lawrence. I'm only Laurie. Laurie Lawrence? What an odd name. My first name is Theodore, but I don't like it, for the fellows called me Dora, so I made them say Laurie instead. I hate my name, too. So sentimental. I wish everyone would say Joe instead of Josephine. How did you make the boys stop calling you Dora? I thrashed 'em. I can't thrash Aunt March, so I suppose I shall have to bear it. And Joe resigned herself with a sigh. So we get this backstory, right? Laurie's name is actually Theodore Lawrence, but he got called Dora and didn't like it, so he goes by Laurie instead. He shortened his last name and goes by Laurie. Um, and so then he kind of talks about how he like thrashed the boys to get them to stop doing that. And Joe talks about how, well, I can't thrash my Aunt March. And so we keep hearing about this Aunt March. We'll meet her later, but she's the person that Joe spends time taking care of. It's a family member of theirs, like a great aunt actually. So elderly, and she takes care of her. Um, and we'll see that Theodore, Laurie, he sometimes gets called Teddy, which would be short for Theodore, right? So he'll be called Laurie, he'll be called Teddy. Don't you like to dance, Miss Joe? Asked Laurie, looking as if he thought the name suited her. I like it well enough if there is plenty of room and everyone is lively. In a place like this, I'm sure to upset something, tread on people's toes, or do something dreadful. So I keep out of mischief and let Meg sail about. Don't you dance? Sometimes. You see, I've been abroad a good many years and haven't been into company enough yet to know how you do things here. So when someone says that they're abroad, what that means is that they've been overseas. So usually they're going to say they're in Europe, that they've been in Europe. So he's saying that he's been abroad, overseas in Europe for many years. Abroad, cried Joe. Oh, tell me about it. I love dearly to hear people describe their travels. Laurie didn't seem to know where to begin, but Joe's eager questions soon set him going. And he told her how he had been at school in Vevey, where the boys never wore hats and had a fleet of boats on the lake, and for holiday fun went on walking trips about Switzerland with their teachers. Don't I wish I'd been there, cried Joe. Did you go to Paris? We spent last winter there. Can you talk French? We were not allowed to speak anything else at Vevey. Do say some. I can read it but can't pronounce. Speaking of, I also cannot pronounce French, so what I am about to say, if anyone knows French, is going to probably alarm you significantly. But with that, Quelle no machette jaune demoiselle en la pantoufle jolie, said Laurie good naturedly. How nicely you do it. Let me see, you said, who is the young lady in the pretty slippers, didn't you? Oui, mademoiselle. He said, yeah. It's my sister Margaret, and you knew it was. Do you think she is pretty? Yes, she makes me think of the German girls. She looks so fresh and quiet and dances like a lady. Joe quite glowed with pleasure at this boyish praise of her sister and stored it up to repeat to Meg. Both peeped and criticized and chatted till they felt like old acquaintances. Laurie's bashfulness soon wore off, for Joe's gentlemanly demeanor amused and set him at his ease, and Joe was her merry self again, because her dress was forgotten and nobody lifted their eyebrows at her. She liked the Lawrence boy better than ever and took several good looks at him so that she might describe him to the girls, for they had no brothers. Very few male cousins, and boys were almost unknown creatures to them. Curly black hair, brown skin, big black eyes, handsome nose, fine teeth, small hands and feet, taller than I am, very polite for a boy, and altogether jolly. Wonder how old he is. So we learned that Laurie has black eyes, and that's going to come up a couple times throughout the rest of the book. So she wants to know how old he is. It was on the tip of Joe's tongue to ask, but she checked herself in time and, with unusual tact, tried to find out in a roundabout way. So it's not like Joe to be kind of tactful, and she kind of thinks, maybe I can find it out without just asking him and being rude. I suppose you are going to college soon. I see you pegging away at your books. No, I mean studying hard. So she says pegging, which is slam, and then feels kind of embarrassed, so she changes it. And Joe blushed at the dreadful pegging which had escaped her. Laurie smiled, but didn't seem shocked, and answered with a shrug. Not for a year or two. I won't go before 17, anyway. Aren't you but 15? Asked Joe, looking at the tall lad, whom she had imagined 17 already. 16 next month. How I wish I was going to college. You don't look as if you liked it. I hate it. Nothing but grinding or skylarking. So studying hard or frolicking, the footnote tells us that means. And I don't like the way fellows do either in this country. What do you like? To live in Italy and enjoy myself in my own way. Joe wanted very much to ask what his own way was, but his black brows looked rather threatening as he knit them, so he's looking kind of serious and upset right now. So she changed the subject by saying, as her foot kept time, That's a splendid polka. Why don't you go and try it? If you will come too, he answered with a gallant little bow. I can't, for I told Meg I wouldn't because. There Joe stopped and looked undecided whether to tell or to laugh. Because what? Asked Lori curiously. You won't tell? Never. Well, I have a bad trick of standing before the fire, and so I burned my frocks, and I scorched this one, and though it's nicely mended, it shows, and Meg told me to keep still so no one would see it. You may laugh if you want to. It is funny, I know. But Laurie didn't laugh. He only looked down a minute, and the expression on his face puzzled Joe when he said very gently, Never mind that. I'll tell you how we can manage. There's a long hall out there, and we can dance grandly, and no one will see us. Please come. Joe thanked him and gladly went, wishing she had two neat gloves when she saw the nice pearl colored ones her partner wore. The hall was empty, and they had a grand polka, for Laurie danced well and taught her the German step, which delighted Joe, being full of swing and spring. When the music stopped, they sat down on the stairs to get their breath, and Laurie was in the midst of an account of a students' festival at Heidelberg, when Meg appeared in search of her sister. She beckoned, and Joe reluctantly followed her into a side room, where she found her on a sofa, holding her foot and looking pale. I've sprained my ankle. This is our answer to question 4. That stupid high heel turned and gave me a sad wrench. It aches so I can hardly stand, and I don't know how I'm ever going to get home, she said, rocking to and fro in pain. I knew you'd hurt your feet with those silly shoes. I'm sorry, but I don't see what you can do except get a carriage or stay here all night, answered Joe, softly rubbing the poor ankle as she spoke. I can't have a carriage without its costing ever so much. I dare say I can't get one at all, for most people come in their own, and it's a long way to the stable, and no one to send. I'll go. No, indeed, it's past 9 and dark as Egypt. I can't stop here, for the house is full. Sally has some girls staying with her. I'll rest till Hannah comes, and then do the best I can. I'll ask Laurie. He will go, said Joe, looking relieved as the idea occurred to her. Mercy, no. Don't ask or tell anyone. Get me my rubbers, those are her boots, and put these slippers with our things. I can't dance any more, but as soon as supper is over, watch for Hannah and tell me the minute she comes. They are going out to supper now. I'll stay with you. I'd rather. No, dear, run along and bring me some coffee. I'm so tired I can't stir. So Meg reclined with rubbers well hidden, and Joe went blundering away to the dining room, which she found after going into a china closet and opening a door of a room where old Mr. Gardner was taking a little private refreshment. Making a dart at the table, she secured the coffee, which she immediately spilled, thereby making the front of her dress as bad as the back. So now she has a giant burn on the back of her dress, a giant stain on the front of her dress. Oh dear, what a blunderbuss I am, exclaimed Joe, finishing Meg's glove by scrubbing her gown with it. So after all of that, she takes Meg's clean, well taken care of glove and uses it to wipe off the coffee. Can I help you? Said a friendly voice. And there was Laurie, with a full cup in one hand and a plate of ice in the other. Ice in this case would be like a frozen treat for them to have. I was going to get something for Meg, who was very tired, and someone shook me, and here I am in a nice state, answered Joe, glancing dismally from the stained skirt to the coffee-colored glove. Too bad. I was looking for someone to give this to. May I take it to your sister? Oh, thank you. I'll show you where she is. I won't offer to take it myself, for I should only get into another scrape if I did. Joe led the way, and as if used to waiting on ladies, Laurie drew up a little table, brought a second installment of coffee and ice for Joe, and was so obliging that even particular Meg pronounced him a nice boy. They had a merry time over the bonbons and mottos, and were in the midst of a quiet game of buzz with 2 or 3 other young people who had strayed in, when Hannah appeared. Meg forgot her foot and rose so quickly that she was forced to catch hold of Joe with an exclamation of pain. Hush, don't say anything, she whispered, adding aloud, It's nothing. I turned my foot a little, that's all, and limped upstairs to put her things on. Hannah scolded, Meg cried, and Joe was at her wits' end till she decided to take things into her own hands. Slipping out, she ran down and, finding a servant, asked if he could get her a carriage. It happened to be a hired waiter who knew nothing about the neighborhood, and Joe was looking round for help when Laurie, who had heard what she said, came up and offered his grandfather's carriage, which had just come for him, he said. It's so early. You can't mean to go yet, began Joe, looking relieved but hesitating to accept the offer. I always go early. I do, truly. Please let me take you home. It's all on my way, you know, and it rains, so they say. That settled it, and telling him of Meg's mishap, Joe gratefully accepted and rushed up to bring down the rest of the party. Hannah hated rain as much as a cat does, so she made no trouble, and they rolled away in the luxurious closed carriage, feeling very festive and elegant. Lori went on the box so Meg could keep her foot up, and the girls talked over their party in freedom. So he's kind of sitting outside of the carriage, and they're sitting inside of it. I had a capital time. Did you? Asked Joe, rumpling up her hair and making herself comfortable. Yes, till I hurt myself. Sally's friend Annie Moffat took a fancy to me and asked me to come and spend a week with her when Sally does. She is going in the spring when the opera comes, and it will be perfectly splendid if Mother only lets me go, answered Meg, cheering up at the thought. Maybe another example of foreshadowing there. I saw you dancing with the red-headed man I ran away from. Was he nice? Oh, very. His hair is auburn, not red, and he was very polite, and I had a delicious redowa with him, which is a type of dance. He looked like a grasshopper in a fit when he did the new step. Laurie and I couldn't help laughing. Did you hear us? No, but it was very rude. What were you about all the time, hidden away there? Joe told her adventures, and by the time she had finished, they were at home. With many thanks, they said good night and crept in, hoping to disturb no one. But the instant their door creaked, two little nightcaps bobbed up, and two sleepy but eager voices cried out, Tell us about the party! Tell about the party! So Amy and Beth are awake and hoping to hear about it. With what Meg called a great want of manners, Joe had saved some bonbons for the little girls, and they soon subsided after hearing the most thrilling events of the evening. So Joe snuck out some of the treats from the party. I declare it really seems like being a fine young lady to come home from the party in a carriage and sit in my dressing gown with a maid to wait on me, said Meg, as Joe bound up her foot with arnica and brushed her hair. I don't believe fine young ladies enjoy themselves a bit more than we do, in spite of our burned hair, old gowns, one glove apiece, and tight slippers that sprain our ankles when we are silly enough to wear them. And I think Joe was quite right. So we see throughout this chapter that Joe's kind of like not really interested in this whole thing of expectations, right? So you're supposed to pick just one quote. And really, as we're thinking about which theme this relates to, I've kind of just mentioned it, right? This idea that a certain way that a lady is supposed to behave, and then how Joe responds to that. So at the end, this is unrelated to question 6, so don't get confused as this, but at the very end, the narrator is giving us a reflection in Joe's comment, right? So Meg's kind of saying, I feel so fancy. I came home in a carriage. I have a maid waiting on me. That maid is her sister, Jo. But Joe's response is, I don't think they have any more pleasant time than we do. And so we're going to see as the story progresses this tension here, right? And again, this is not the answer to question 6, so don't be confused by my reflections at the end. That Joe here is saying, I don't think that people with more money are having a more pleasant life than we are. And there's going to be a little bit of this tension back and forth throughout the story. Some of the characters will agree and say money doesn't really make you more happy. And others, however, are going to say, if only, right? If I had more money, then everything would be better. So, okay, so fifth graders, you've got your questions. Hopefully you have a really clear picture based on the discussion we've been having throughout. So good luck, and I can't wait to hear from you.